Thank you very much. Okay, so when it comes to looking at the GDP strength we've had, it's certainly not showing itself against the US dollar. Although if you compare this picture to the euro, you'll see how there's been no bearish breakout here at all, and we're still testing the top of our channel. We did have an overlay, which must have been on Thursday, would have gone on to hit take profit for a small win. Again, guys, apologies for the noise here. I'm having this session at our local restaurant, which my daughter manages, and it is a bit noisier than usual. So do forgive me for that. I hope you can hear me all right. All right, so moving on to another one which gave us a nice winning trade last week, and I'm just looking at on the 4-hour time frame here, was dollar yen. Similar thing. So if we just go up to our daily time frame, we had that breakout. We were looking for an H4 impulse through the course of last week, and that would have obviously, I think, been Tuesday where that did trigger and hit target on Thursday. So again, you can see that pullback on Friday for the non-farm payroll. So it's still very much in breakouts, as you know. We can see very clearly that this is a bullish market at the moment. Remember, we're not trying to predict what's going to happen next. It's not about that. But right now, we are on the daily time frame certainly seeing a bullish trend here. So don't let it go to waste. You see on a weekly time frame, we haven't had a breakout. What we did have is, I see this morning our overlay would have actually hit take profit. We just missed it last week, but it would have hit our take profit now this morning. But that's inside of the channel. So we're only looking at the lower time frame for our trend. So we're talking about a continuation entry. If this does turn into a retracement wave, which currently it's looking like it may well, we may well have a continuation set up for a kickstart, deep kickstart through the course of this week. And if we see the end of any retracement and the potential start of an impulse wave, that obviously would help you to drop down to lower time frames and into the H4 impulse, being an example. All right, so really, I'm looking at both. So yes, previous setups, we're looking at some of the trades we had last week, as well as looking forward to the week ahead, as always. All right, so dollar Swiss, another one. Obviously, this is just almost like a mirror image of the euro. We had a bearish H4 impulse on the Euro USD, and we had a bullish one on dollar Swiss. So that was relatively useful as well. There were a couple of losers as well, but you can see that these winners were pretty chunky. So if you're looking at, I think that dollar yen was an initial reward to risk of around 3-1. You just need 2 or 3 of those to cover, like 10 losers plus still end up with profit at the end of the day. So yeah, dollar Swiss, just almost a mirror image of that. I'm not going to go into the details of the strategies. You guys know that already, and all of that information is available for you in the training if you're not familiar with it. All right, so non-farm payroll again visible, that pullback on Friday. Just to repeat, when I say you came in a bit late, because you were one of the people asking me about non-farms. It also depends on the time frame. So targeting is important. If you're going for a high reward to risk ratio and you're already accepting a low success ratio anyway, then you're not really going to be fussed about non-farm payroll. But if you are trading the lower time frames as well, you just need to be aware of the potential risk gapping and slippage. That also depends on your broker, of course, but I don't think that was a problem on Friday. But certainly quite a few trades, the lower time frame stuff would have been stopped on Friday with the non-farm retracement. All right, so that's dollar Swiss. What's next? So, USD Cad still very much on the daily time frame. Just looking at weekly as well. We spoke about this before. We did have an overlay over here, which would have actually stopped out this morning. Maybe we've survived that, but for a very small loss. We went long on that. We spoke about that last week, Monday. But here we're looking at also an overlay on the daily time frame. So going in exactly the opposite direction. So stock has already been trailed to the preceding highs. I'm sure this morning our stock would have been trailed to, or even on Friday would have been trailed to above Friday's high. But you can see here, if I just need to move that across. Again, I don't want to get too bogged down and talking about strategies that we're still testing, but effectively our current take profit on this will look a little bit more like that. So pretty close to our take profit on this. Let's see what happens during the course of today. If it does, we should score well over 0.5% on that one. Remember, the overlay strategy is not specifically designed to make us money overall. They're there to help minimize drawdown on our core strategies, which much as when they make money, they make a lot, they tend to lose over extended periods of time. Aussie, this one also an overlay, which on Friday I think it'll take profit. The interesting thing with the Aussie at the moment, let me just bring that down, is as you know, we had that very long extended bullish upswing, most of which was trending conditions that broke down several weeks ago, and we've just been in this flat phase 2 retracement, still sitting at that, still looking at an overall retracement here. There hasn't really been anything except Friday's bullish impulse candle showing us the potential that this may well be over. If you look at it on weekly time frame as well, still very much in that retracement wave on weekly, but it has respected the support levels. So that up there a little bit. It has respected that support level. Friday, there was a bit of a gap from Thursday into Friday's open, but as you can see, we have not had a single close below that support level, that being an open. So that's quite interesting. So at the moment, that support level being respected on weekly, which if we drop down to daily here, we're starting to see some interesting movement around this, particularly the break of this bearish trend line on the daily time frame. So not yet enough necessarily for us to look at this for a daily impulse. I'd like to see the turnaround on this, particularly also on the weekly, having an indication that we are in fact into the next potential bullish impulse wave. We need to have a higher low at the end of this week for that, and then obviously we would drop down to daily for a high execution on that. All right, so I'm running a little bit behind here. I'm still on the majors and minors. Kiwi on, well, let's just look at weekly first. We spoke about this before, the fact that it hasn't respected the support level like the Aussie has. Very flat, and you see that on the daily in particular. Don't think we had an overlay on this last week simply because our channel wasn't retested. We want to have certainly the point A on our M or W patterns touching, or potential point X, in other words, touching the channel boundary as well. And I think, Muna, just talking about your question on gold last week, I don't think that selection criteria was met on that. All right, so moving on, just a little bit slow at the moment. Just relying on a restaurant's Wi-Fi as well. Okay. Right, moving on to the yen crosses. So we had that outside close before, as we know, but still testing that resistance level. I don't think we had anything here of particular interest last week. We don't have a valid W pattern here either for those of you who are trading that, and still well inside of that channel. So nothing much doing there. I think there we go. The GBP pair is much more interesting. So again, looking at the weekly time frame, we've been in a breakout now for 2 solid weeks. So many of you should already be into your daily impulse trades here. I think you probably got into some of those beforehand. And there was certainly another setup last week for daily impulse. So there you see how we wouldn't be worried about non-farms at all, especially on a currency pair that doesn't include the dollar, where Friday first thing, you should have gone long on a daily impulse. And certainly if today gives us another higher close, you'll be almost at break even on your trading stock with a 2-5 step. So pretty straightforward, much more obvious when you have a picture like that. Whereas you can see on the yen pairs here, we haven't seen the same thing at all. This was potentially on the weekly time frame a bearish overlay or coming up. I think we had one before with this being the channel mark. It's always a bit tricky when we need to remember that the channel has actually come down. So I don't think we've had one. And we won't have one now either because point A is not actually connecting with our, although we do have a lower close. Ideally, we want to have point A touching or intersecting with our channel boundary. Certainly that's what we're testing at the moment. But also that's, even though it had a lower close on last week's, last week's candle, it didn't actually close in the bottom half of the candle. So technically, for me, that's not strictly a full bearish candle either. On the daily time frame, we did have a small winner on the overlay, so that was fair enough. But yeah, nothing to write home about on this. Here we go, CAD yen. Let's go to weekly again quickly, where we had the breakout last week. So we should actually be, even if you didn't do it last week, certainly this morning, unless you're waiting for that pullback before you look to trade it. Many of you should already be in a daily impulse here. Certainly, I think we're looking at here as well is last week with that bullish breakout. If you were looking to trade 3 non-farm payroll H4 impulse, that's what this was over here, I think, possibly. And you may have got into an H4 impulse in this one, depending on whether you wanted to trade through non-farm payrolls or not. But certainly valid for this week. You guys can see that, I'm sure. Nicely outside of the channel. Very, very bullish indeed. Aussie yen, not so much. Just coming up to that boundary on the daily time frame. We had a small overlay win on this last week. We do have the start of the next impulse wave on the weekly time frame. So again, depending on whether you're waiting for that pullback or not, which I prefer to do, you may well have gone long on this on a daily impulse this morning already. So if you haven't, then if you get the breakout and a retracement, you can just go long in the next, after the pullback in the next impulse candle. Last of the yen crosses. Let me just drop down. So what are we looking at? All right, so again, this one just, I think I actually said something wrong last week. I think I was talking about this actually closing inside the channel. It didn't, in fact. So last week certainly gave you the opportunity, last week, the week before even, to go long on this on a daily impulse. So having a look at this over here, you may well have found yourself an impulse candle anywhere after one of these pullbacks and gone long on this, in which case you've either hit, I don't think you would take profit, but certainly what you would have been able to do is get yourself to break even on this. As you can see as well on the daily time frame, we did have the outside close in terms of our 4-wave 13 candle channel. So that was also a valid breakout already last week, Wednesday. So you may have been looking to trade this on the H4 impulse last week. It's still very much valid even from this morning if you didn't after the pullback and that the end of that, or simply that higher close. It looks like we could certainly have treated this as the start of our next potential impulse wave, definitely with a higher close on Friday, dropping down to the 4-hour time frame. And yeah, maybe just wait for the end of a pullback. If you're just going with the times, if you've gotten the training, what are we looking at over here? Let's get that check box out of the way. Yeah, certainly you may well have already gone long on this. As always, I do like to wait for a bit of a pullback and have that next impulse candle before going long. Let's see what happens. Monday's often being a bit trickier, obviously, but still, as always, we're not interested in avoiding losers. We're much more interested in making sure we get the winners. Okay. Right, so here we have Eurogbp moving into the Euro crosses. Had a bit of an interesting week last week where I think we just had a breakout previously as well, with that bearish close during the course of that wave. And I know some of you got short on that, but if it was on the H4 impulse, I think that would have stopped out at break even. Gene, we were chatting about that, but it ended up not being a profitable trade anyway. But as you can see, we did get a strong continuation on that in the end. Just going to weekly as well, of course. The previous week, we would have spoken about this with the bearish breakout. So looking for any bearish impulse candles to the course of last week. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I don't think that made it. Hello. And this obviously being a bearish impulse candle, could have been a setup for you to go short with the daily impulse. Not doing much at the moment, of course, but we know that that's often how it goes. Right, so Euro Swiss, you guys know my opinion on this. I think we were trading this on the weekly. Sorry about the noise again. Oh no, we haven't. We had a nice bearish overlay that did take profits last week, Tuesday. I think I spoke about the setup on this. Sorry, I'm talking about the weekly time frame here. We haven't spoken about this. Confused with my time frames here. So on daily, yeah, nothing much happening over here. It was a valid W pattern, of course, if you were looking to go long on this on the lower time frames. Euro Swiss, of course, being very correlated pair though. So I have a bias against it, has to be said. But you can see that even on these highly correlated pairs, things can work out just fine. Eurocad also not doing much. We had a bullish overlay that actually got stopped out during the course of last week for about a 0.35% loss, if I remember correctly, if you're risking 1% a trade. Daily, you can see nothing much going on here, very much inside of the channel. That preceding overlay that was a winner was the week before. So I would have mentioned that in last session. Euro Aussie, interesting here as well, where you can see how the retracement wave here, which is actually on the weekly time frame, that retracement, we've seen a breakdown, the sequentiality of cyclicity last week. It respected that resistance level. So definitely this is a bearish daily impulse that you could take straight away, unless you're going to wait for that pullback before looking for the next impulse wave on the daily time frame. Either way, so on the weekly time frame, very bearish, and looks like we've seen the end of that retracement wave. Could still break down, of course, but and you can see that cyclicity breaking down quite clearly here on the daily time frame. Last of the Euro crosses, similar picture. It did, I think, just encroach on that resistance level on the weekly time frame, but of course, still strongly bearish cyclicity over here. So if you're looking to go short, let me just pop back to that quickly. We've been outside of that channel already from the preceding week's close. So last week you could have gone for a bearish entry on the impulse candle, which would have been Tuesday's impulse candle. So that would have been an entry over there to go short on the daily impulse with that impulse candle. So that being said, you would have already trailed your stop with a 2-5 step to that point. Let's see what happens with this. If you're not in it, then look for a bearish impulse candle through the course of this week. Might happen today, which would give you a perfect setup again to just on a daily impulse. Likewise, if we do get that, it would also be valid for us to go short on H4 impulse. The more expensive pairs, obviously, Euro NZD, so a bit for that. GBP Swiss, here's that pound strength showing itself again. We had the last week was definitely a breakout candle on the weekly. So another example where we'd be looking for a bullish impulse candle to go long on this for daily impulse during the course of this week. And obviously in the lower time frames as well, we can load that up. Cad, a bit messier. Let's look at the weekly first. So much as last week's candle, it did close outside. So I don't think it succeeded the preceding week, but it did close outside last week. A nice low test there as well, or hammer. And what are we looking at here? I think I was looking at my initial risk potentially to go long. So yeah, we had a bullish impulse candle during the course of last week. So if you were jumping the gun, you might have already taken that on your daily impulse. But even without looking at daily impulse, we're still looking at our daily channel here for the H4 impulse. That is definitely an outside close. So these are perfect conditions to be looking for H4 impulse in a bullish direction as well. Just need to get that bullish impulse candle on that time frame. Right, GBP Aussie, not much doing here. We had a very nice bearish overlay that went hit the full take profits on this last week on the daily time frame. You can see not much happening here on the weekly. I did speak about the winner on the overlay last week, I'm sure. Actually it would have gone straight to the full take profit on that, although we moved the take profit a bit closer already. But certainly a nice one on daily. And may well be another setup. Certainly if this is, if we get this high isolated today on daily, for instance, if it were to close here, that would definitely be another bearish overlay setup for us to go short on this, bearing in mind that we would also be trading this to our new point A. So X to A, a nice impact over here for us in the daily time frame. But not trending at the moment. We might get a bullish breakout there as well. So what happened on GBP NZD? This is daily time frame. Yeah, another winner. This was another very nice winner on the overlay. So Monday, in fact, yeah, Monday we entered it. At open, it went straight to take profit during the course of Monday. And again, another potential bearish overlay here on GBP NZD. Similar picture to what we just looked at. So nothing trending, obviously, on that. These are all that would be arranging. Right, so that's the end of those crosses. Moving to the other pairs, Cad Swiss here on the weekly time frame, testing that resistance level, no question about it. Last week we actually had the stop out on our overlay for a small loser. And here you can see on the daily time frame how we had a strong bullish impulse wave come up straight to the resistance level again, and well, it's still finding resistance there. So nothing for us to do here, although we may well be looking for a bearish overlay on that if it continues to find resistance. What else? Aussie Swiss. Let's go to first. Yeah, so you've seen this picture a few times now, I think mostly on Aussie pairs, where certainly last week it's a bullish impulse candle, but regardless, that's isolated that low on weekly time frame. We are now technically in an established trend. We're now into the next cycle of it. So that certainly is a setup for us to go long on a daily impulse. As always, you've got the choice between going for it straight away. You probably need to use your ATR stop for that, or else you can wait for the breakout and pull back. So look for an impulse candle after a pullback. So, pretty clear on that one. And Aussie CAD, yeah, we had that bearish breakout through the course of last week on the daily time frame, but it's pulled straight back inside. So nothing for us to do over there. There's no valid M pattern either. But you can see here on the weekly time frame how we're very much still in a bullish trend. But the retracement wave, the bearish retracement on that is not yet over. So unfortunately, it has been a nice setup, but not yet. Okay. Aussie Kiwi on weekly. Yeah, this has been a bit of a mess, hasn't it? So this would certainly be a setup if this low gets isolated. We'll talk about that maybe next week, Monday, to go long on a bullish trade for an overlay. But I'll leave that. But we could see that potentially on the horizon. However, on the daily time frame, we've just had that long extended bearish impulse wave, impulse. So it's definitely not bullish on the daily time frame. However, it is in a bullish retracement on this time frame. So nothing for us to do here at all. Kiwi Swiss is a bit of a different story. Let's look at weekly first, though. Where, as we discussed beforehand, we had that encroachment and the pulling back inside the resistance level, but it did break out again. So for those channel traders last week, we did have the preceding week close outside of the channel, which means there was definitely a potential setup for us to go long for the course of last week on a daily impulse. So either you did or you didn't. If you did, you should be pretty close to break even on that. So relatively nice trade. So it's the end of last week, of course, we had the pullback on Thursday and Friday, in fact, where we can actually see that it's still well outside of our channel. Very, very nice. And certainly if today closes anything like it's looking at the moment, we'd be looking to trade this on the lower time frame, H4 impulse, for instance, going in a bullish direction. And I think the last of our currency pairs. Oops. Slow you up. That was me. My fault. Zero. Okay, so Kiwi Cad. We spoke about that encroachment as well last week, but it's certainly been an outside close, pretty weak, and you can see on the daily time frame over here we haven't had any nice strong bullish action at all. So we did have a valid bearish trade here on our overlay strategy. That being said, it might actually have been closed out on this morning's open. I'd have to double check that on the live account. Regardless, though, it's still, we did have a valid setup using the 4-wave channel to go short on this with an overlay. All right, so that's all of the currency pairs. I haven't updated anything on the commodities and so on, I don't think. Certainly gold. We are now into an M pattern. But yeah, gold on the daily, certainly last week we had a break outside of our preceding channels, but with non-farms it pulled back certainly inside of what was support expected to be a resistance level. So it's still pretty choppy. But yeah, I'm not going to focus on these for today. And also, those of you who are trading now with the new, with your brand new funded accounts, certainly on your evaluation accounts, you can only trade those 28 currency pairs. So we are going to be focusing on those going forward, unless there's any specific questions. And if you're watching this as a recording, please do pop your questions into the comments below, and I'll be able to give you a bit of an update on that. But for those of you who are here live, has anybody else, got any questions for me on anything else that you've come? A couple of questions we've had on the funded accounts last week. The only fee you pay on that is, in fact, the setup of the evaluation account. So if you pass the evaluation, there's no further fees at all, certainly for Academy members. Yeah, so we've been able to negotiate a pretty good deal for you guys here. And another question is, what about your own personal live accounts? Well, obviously, that's entirely up to you. But the option you have is taking, let's say $700 if you want the $10,000 evaluation account, and treating that as your own personal account. You've got a maximum 4% relative drawdown on that, but you only need to make a 6% profit target in order to be upgraded to your first portfolio manager account, which would be 4 times whatever it is that you did on your evaluation account. So if you started off with 10K, you'd be on a 40K portfolio manager account, which is pretty decent. If you can get to that level, then if you make the profit target on that, which would be $5,000, you're getting 50% of that. So it accelerates your progress in terms of your ability to make money. Now, if you're concerned about your own performance, fair enough. But if that's the case, then you really should be getting yourself to a point where you are profitable on a demo account. And then using your first funded account really as a testing ground to help you develop your trader's mindset. It really does make a big difference. And we give you full support on that as well, a lot more coaching if you are trading a bigger account. Starting off with a $1,000 or $2,000 live account is certainly going to do more for your trader's mindset than trading on demo. But nevertheless, going from a $2,000 live account to a $10,000 account, well, you're going to have the same leap anyway, and you're risking your full $2,000. Whereas on a $10,000 funded account, you're only risking $700 of your own money, and you can always go again. In fact, $2,000 or $2,100 would give you 3 $10,000 funded accounts over time. Right. So no questions from you guys. So yeah, it's been a bit noisy here. Hope you guys could hear me all right. Bit of a change coming from the restaurant, but hopefully you guys found that useful. And we will be doing another training session for you during the course of the week. So please do make sure to attend that. And we will be posting a poll again as to what you want me to cover in that training. That will be on Thursday, I think. We will confirm that. All right, so no questions. So I will bid you all a fabulous Monday and a great trading week ahead. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.